Hello, this is Josh Jacobs from MIT. We're so pleased today to have as our LGO Web Seminar guest Denise Johnson, who's LGO class of 1997. I'm just going to give a brief introduction and then Denise will start her presentation. What we like to do is have the presenter go straight through and then take Q&A at the end. If you have anything you'd like to say along the way, please use the chat function to let me know. Denise Johnson is the General Manager for Specialty Products for Caterpillar Remanufacturing and Components. She's responsible for 17 facilities across the Americas, Europe, and Asia. And she'll tell us more about the details of her role at Caterpillar in just a few minutes. Prior to joining Caterpillar, Denise was the President and Managing Director of GM do Brasil in, I always take pleasure in this, São Caetano do Sul, Brazil, where she managed operations for GM's third largest market and led a product strategy shift to develop new emerging market products and had some product launches as well. Johnson spent 22 years in the auto industry, beginning as a product engineer, and she has held various positions within engineering, manufacturing, and planning before she was named as plant manager of the Oshawa Truck Assembly in Ontario, Canada, and held various other leadership positions, including the Vice President of North America Labor Relations for GM. And she is a member of the Automotive Hall of Fame for Young Leadership and Excellence in 2002. Denise's first degree was a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from Michigan State University, and of course she earned her MBA and her Master's in Mechanical Engineering from MIT as part of the LGO, or as it was then called, the Leaders for Manufacturing program. And so it gives us great pleasure again to welcome Denise Johnson.
Okay, well, thank you, Josh. It's a great pleasure to be here with all of you today. As Josh mentioned, I graduated from the LGO program in 1997 and have had the privilege of working for two LGO partner companies, General Motors and Caterpillar, and I've had some fantastic leadership experiences along the way. So Josh asked for me to share a little bit about my leadership journey. So the bulk of this presentation is going to be about my career and some of the insights that I gained along the way. So for those of you who aren't familiar, although I doubt there are many, I wanted to start by just talking a little bit about Caterpillar. Caterpillar is a Fortune 100 company headquartered in Peoria with 155,000 employees globally. The company is the world's leading manufacturer for construction and mining equipment, for diesel and natural gas engines, for industrial gas engines, and diesel electric locomotives. In addition, the company also is a leading service provider through Cat Financial. We have a Reman manufacturing business, as well as a logistics business and a Progress Rail Services Corporation. The company has done very well in the last few years. In fact, outstanding execution in 2011 with record-breaking sales and revenues of about $60 billion. And if any of you listened to last week's earnings broadcast, the outlook for 2012 with the company is between $68 and $72 billion. So a huge increase year over year, and really the largest percentage increase if you look at sales between 2010 and 2011 since 1947. Caterpillar has paid dividends to stockholders every year since 1925 and has paid dividends for 316 consecutive quarters. So obviously the company has been very successful and is truly a global business. Caterpillar equipment, there are more than 3 million pieces around the world, and so many of you may see them on highways in the construction arena, but there's a lot of other areas where Caterpillar actually does business that you may not be aware of. So the primary industries do include demolition and scrap, oil and gas, forestry, paving, general construction. There's a pipeline, governmental, and power generation services area, as well as heavy construction, quarry and aggregate, railroad, landscaping, road construction. So a lot of different businesses in the area of infrastructure build and also mining. There have been 3 major acquisitions that Caterpillar has taken in the last few years. The first is one called Bucyrus, which is basically a mining equipment provider. So there's a lot of equipment that's built, shovels, drills, underground mining equipment. That was a recent acquisition, in addition to MWM, which is a leading supplier for natural gas as well as EMD, which is electromotive diesel locomotives. So huge breadth of overall industry experience and expertise. Many of you may be aware that Caterpillar is a brand that's on more than just the equipment. There are a lot of clothing and shoes as well as Caterpillar equipment that have been branded Caterpillar. But in addition to the Caterpillar brand, there's a myriad of other brands that Caterpillar has. You may be familiar with some of those, so I just wanted to touch on them. So as I indicated, I am the general manager for specialty products, and many people may not know it, but Caterpillar is fairly vertically integrated. So my business unit includes design, manufacturing, and purchasing for a large number of the components that go into our machines and equipment. I have responsibility globally for 20 plants, which includes 3 joint ventures and over 250,000 part numbers. So it's parts like hoses, couplings, seals, gaskets, mounts, oil coolers, pins, cartridge pins, piston pins. We actually mix our own rubber that goes into much of our rubber componentry, as well as have design control and purchase spend for a large number of components that are purchased from suppliers like tires and rims, fluids like diesel fuel, coolants and lubricants, air and liquid filters and bearings and fasteners. So you see a lot of the products that are in my space play heavily in the aftermarket. So about a quarter of the total aftermarket for Caterpillar includes components that are built in specialty products. So it allows significant profit opportunity, and many of the components need to be replaced numerous times over the life of the equipment. So shifting over a little bit to my experience and my background. So I want to take you back. So I've been at Caterpillar for approximately a year. I wanted to talk a little bit about my history. So from a background perspective, I was raised in rural Michigan in a small farming community. Being from Michigan, of course, tied very heavily to the auto industry. Both of my grandfathers worked in automotive factories. My father worked for an automotive in an automotive factory, and when I started middle school, his plant closed. So he was unemployed for a few years, and I saw, really firsthand some of the impact of the downturn and what that means in a state like Michigan and in an industry where it is very cyclical and there's opportunity to have an impact on people. I wish I could say that I always loved building things or had a natural curiosity that drove me to go into engineering. But quite frankly, as I researched in high school what I wanted to do in college, I really was looking primarily for, what jobs could provide me long-term stability for income, and that there was a need for out in the field. And of course, at the time that I graduated, engineering, as it remains today, was one field that continued to have high demand for individuals. So I chose to go into mechanical engineering, and I was always strong in math and science, so it really was a natural connection for me to move into that. And I applied to Michigan State University and commuted actually from home at the time that I went. I had a very different undergraduate experience than perhaps most LGO students because I was married when I turned 18, and very quickly afterwards started my family. So my husband and I have 3 wonderful daughters, 2 of whom we had while we were still in undergraduate study, and the third daughter once I started working full-time. But I can honestly say that I grew up quickly and learned to multitask and balance work and family at a very young age. And I think that gave me a unique perspective as I approached my career in really trying to juggle multiple tasks at one time. But I can honestly say there were a lot of people at the time that I entered university and had 2 young children who didn't really believe that I was going to be able to make it through. And I remember even my mother saying, oh, Denise, you'll never be able to finish your degree now that you have these children. And I remember, really being disappointed in the statement because really the thought of not finishing my degree or moving on to do something with my career was something that never crossed my mind. So I think it really made me more determined than ever to succeed. One advantage of attending Michigan State was that there were a large number of automotive factories that were nearby. And so as I attended school during the summers, I had the opportunity to apply for a summer internship. And so for 4 summers while I was attending school, I actually worked full-time. And so it was a natural transition then as I was getting ready to graduate and they were looking to fill their pipeline for new engineers that I hired in directly into that plant in the Lansing area and moved into the area of product design for chassis systems. So I started off as a test engineer for steering and brake systems, and I learned the ropes, you know, working in failure modes and in durability and reliability of designs, and then moved into a design position within a few years. So all in all, I spent about 6 years working in product design, kind of rooting my competence in understanding component and system design. And these were probably the years that were the most important to build my base understanding for how components and systems were designed and taken from concept through to production. I get a lot of questions from individuals, engineers that come to me and ask for me to give them my perspective on whether they should have, you know, cross-functional experiences or whether they should try to build deep competence in one particular area. And honestly, from my own experience and what I have seen, I believe that really every person should have a core competence or a deep competence from which they build on. And that can be your homeroom to build your career from. And it certainly was the case for me. I feel I was rooted very firmly in product design and that helped me in all the other experiences I had as I moved throughout my career. As part of my responsibility in product engineering, I traveled pretty extensively to the assembly plants each year for startups, and I remember being drawn to the manufacturing environment and really liking the idea of working with people in addition to the technical concepts. And so as I moved and looked at opportunities for the future, once I had some experience under my belt, I learned about the LGO program, and at that point I went to MIT in the transition between moving from product engineering into manufacturing. And so I will speak a little more about my experience with the Leaders for Manufacturing, or LGO program as it is now called. But it really helped me to make the transition as I moved from product engineering into manufacturing and make that and bridge that gap. I was really liked the idea of moving into manufacturing primarily based on the fact that it was very hands-on and that it had not only the people aspects but the technical aspects. And so as I left to go into for the MIT program, my children were at that point, I think 8, 6, and 3. My husband was working for a company that had a branch in the Boston area. And so when I moved to Boston for the 2 years, I really felt that moving into manufacturing was the ideal venue for me. And so when I approached the program, I was looking at it from the perspective of really looking at it as a transition. So as I returned to GM after the 2 years in the LGO program, I remember when I returned, my welcome into manufacturing wasn't at all welcoming. So here I was, a woman engineer who just graduated from MIT, asking to be placed in, you know, a leadership role in the assembly plant where I knew no one. And so they were really hesitant. And the job that they gave me as I returned was actually at a level lower than I was because they felt I needed to really understand and learn the ropes. And I will tell you that experience, that single experience of having to go backwards in order to go forwards, was difficult for me, but it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me in that transition because I really had to take a step back and understand from, you know, not from a position of authority, but from a position of actual understanding and learn the ropes. I had to work the night shift. I worked in the worst part of the plant. I had terrible hours. We had lots of union issues. But I will tell you that experience is really what reaffirmed to me, first of all, that manufacturing was where I wanted to be, but also really helped me to gain credibility. It helped me to learn really what manufacturing was all about, and it forced me to really look at leading from a people perspective. So I wanted to talk about 3 key leadership roles, and I know I'm staying on this slide a little bit long, but as I think back through my career in the auto industry, there were a number of key roles that I had that really were key. But before I moved into the key leadership roles, I had the opportunity to move into a few key staff roles. I worked as the chief of staff for the vice president of manufacturing, and then later as the director for business planning, and ran GM's North America Strategy Board. In these staff roles, you know, you really don't feel like you contribute as much as in a line role, but I tell you, the value that I received from the staff role was that I was able to really understand the politics of the company, and I was able to establish connections with the senior leaders throughout the company so that my network was very developed. So as I returned from those key staff roles and into a line role, I knew who was running the company, and they knew me, and that was a huge advantage for me as I moved in and out of the various roles. So as I continued to pretty much spend a majority of my career in manufacturing, one of my key leadership roles was actually as a plant manager at the Oshawa truck plant, and I want to speak a little bit about that. As I took the assignment as plant manager of this plant, there were over 3,600 employees that were really running 3 shifts a day, working overtime to build full-size pickup trucks. Great plant from the perspective of quality. It was one of the most productive plants in the world. But that said, we also were the highest cost within General Motors. And so at the time, we went from running a maximum overtime with 3 shifts down to 2 shifts, and then the downturn took place, and we went from 2 shifts down to 1 shift, and then within a year's time frame, we had to make the decision to close the facility. And I don't know if any of you have ever had to experience what it's like to announce a plant closure and then to actually take individuals through a plant closure, but it is truly a devastating experience for many. And from a leadership perspective, was one of the most difficult professional experiences that I ever had to go through. You know, people are just losing their livelihoods, and so the focus was, you know, initially on finding jobs for them in the community and helping them to mentally transition, and then eventually to actually closing the plant. And I will tell you that we closed that plant with the highest quality that it had ever seen, and the highest quality within the company. And so it was, in the end, a bittersweet experience, but I really learned the true value of integrity and of empathy. So the people side of the human aspect of being a leader, I learned from that experience. The second key leadership role that I wanted to talk about a little bit was when I was the Vice President of Labor Relations. This was immediately after General Motors was restructured, and my predecessor had just negotiated a more competitive labor agreement. So my job was to really work to implement the agreement and get the savings from the contract, because if we couldn't get the savings out with implementation, then it was, you know, potential unmet. And so I learned quite a bit from that experience. A lot of politics, of course, in a position like that, where you're dealing with the senior leadership of the company in addition to the senior leadership of the unions. And we had, you know, more than one union to work with. The CAW, UAW were the largest, but we had many small splinter unions that we worked with as well. And so it was a challenging time. You know, we had the power, I would say, of the restructuring in the government behind us, but we also had a huge opportunity in really moving the needle and getting the contract implemented. I can't say that it was my favorite job. I think actually it was probably the most frustrating position that I held, but it was one where I learned patience. I learned the value of silence in negotiations, which is a powerful tool. And anyone who's taken the negotiations course at LGO knows that that is the case, but to actually have the patience to hold for the silence is truly powerful. And the other thing I think I learned to do was to really think before I spoke. And so it was a real key experience for me and taught me a lot about myself, as well as I learned a lot about how people work. The third key leadership role that I wanted to talk about today was with regard to the role that I held last at General Motors, which was the Managing Director of GM Brazil. Truly was the best assignment of my career, and if you look at it from a career perspective, and I'll speak a little more about work-life balance, but there are some positions that are just really awesome, and this was one of them. As Josh spoke, Brazil is the third largest market for General Motors and the second largest for Chevrolet. So the country is growing fast. There's really a flood of competitive entries in the market, and the focus when I was in Brazil was on new product introduction and execution. And GM's portfolio for vehicles in Brazil was aging, and it was really based on a lot of legacy architectures. And so with a hyper-competitive environment and moving into new technology, it was really important to make sure that the cost and the prices were as low as possible, but that you had the highest technology available. So the opportunity it gave me was to really own a P&L of something that was extremely large, to utilize my leadership and technical skills, not only the product development side and the manufacturing experience, but also the leadership experience. And you know, certainly being in a new country, trying to learn a new language, you know, working not only technically, but also having to interface outside of work in situations where you're really unfamiliar with the culture and the language was a huge challenge for me, but it was very, very rewarding. And so I learned some great lessons in persistence and in ingenuity and in attitude from working there. And I'll speak a little bit more about my transition away from that position in a couple of slides. So as I look over my career at GM, I would never have planned it the way it happened. I don't think anyone could have guessed it was going to take the twists and turns that it did. So when people come and talk to me about, you know, how do you build a career path, it's really tough to give them advice and saying you need to have a line of sight to what you want to do. And I hear a lot of advice on know where you want to be in 10 years or in, you know, 15 years. And I prefer to tell people to focus on doing a great job. It is important to be clear on what you want to do next. And I think if you have line of sight to your next one or two positions, that's important. But I've never allowed my thinking to constrict me into anything that came up. And as you saw, moving into from a technical product engineering into manufacturing and taking a lot of different roles, I was very open to that, but at the same time stayed very grounded in the competence and the functional expertise that I had developed early in my career. So as you look at the automotive industry, and for anyone that's considering the automotive industry, I think you'll find it a very fascinating place. So clearly it's more competitive now than it ever has been before. There's new and exciting technologies that are being introduced every day. There's a clear connection with the customer, which I think is really something that is wonderful about the automotive industry, is that you really do have that connection. The automobile is an emotional purchase for many people, so people connect with their vehicles from many levels, and I think that's why the industry is so exciting to work in and be a part of. Clearly, there's large challenges, though. You know, global competitors, the environment is really difficult to make much money on with all of the new competition coming in. Very fast-paced. I think the other thing is that it's a very competitive environment from a people leadership perspective as well. And so, if you look at the kinds of people that are in the auto industry, certainly you know, it's not for someone who's looking for a super stable environment if you want to be a senior leader. I also think, you know, the whole idea, especially being in a U.S. automaker, certainly the financial difficulties lately have made a huge difference for image and reputation. And so the challenge of overcoming that image and reputation and the impact that it will take for time to heal, to be able to get out from beyond, is something that I think is happening, but it is a slow process and something that is definitely a challenge for U.S. automakers. So clearly, in the end, you know, companies that have the best products competitively priced will win. And the auto industry is one of those areas where something is always changing. And so I really enjoyed my experiences in the auto industry, and am happy to have had the opportunity to work there. One thing that I've been asked to hit on today was really in being a female manufacturing leader. The manufacturing environment really does not have many female leaders. From my experience, it's somewhere around maybe 10 to 15%. There are a few companies where I've seen it as high as 20%, and it is growing. But there are many reasons I think that the statistics are fairly low when you look at the general, leadership population of managers and even technical managers within industries. Clearly, the manufacturing environment it can be a 24/7 job. A lot of shift work, a lot of calls in the middle of the night, constant issues. The environment can be very challenging. Clearly, it's often dirty or difficult, confrontational. There's a lot of conflict that you see in the manufacturing environment. But I don't think there's anything intrinsically which does not attract female leaders to the manufacturing environment. And so, as I prepared to move in, and I did not see huge barriers to moving across, but I did notice as I really focused on preparing for this and thinking about, was there something specific that I did in order to prepare for the environment and adjust my style to fit in. And I did find that I did, and I think I didn't have to change myself as a person, but I did have to adjust my approach to fit into the environment better. So I don't mean to say that you have to mimic a male leader as a female manufacturing leader, but I do think you have to send specific signals that would say you mean business and that you take the job seriously, and that you are taken as a leader regardless of whether you're male or female. So one of the things that I'm speaking of when I speak of this was even my speaking style. So I was home one day with my daughters, and someone called me from work, and so I was on the phone and speaking to them, and when I ended the call, my daughter said, when you get on the phone and talk to work, you always go to a deeper tone. You kind of lower your voice. Do you realize you do that? And actually, I hadn't realized that I did that. It was not intentional. I think it was something that maybe I was, trying to sound more authoritative, or maybe more in control, but it was not something that I consciously tried to do. And it was interesting that there's a lot of things that you do to adjust your style so that you can be better received and or come across in a way that demonstrates you understand what you're doing. I would say, certainly as a woman, I always wanted to maintain my femininity, but logic, really told me that you have to be, put practical, tasteful, conservative clothing, and so even dressing for the environment as a woman leader, I think, becomes important. I recently read a book that's called Nice Girls Don't Get into the Corner Office, or Don't Get the Corner Office, rather, by Lois Frankel. And I read it and found it interesting, so I'd highly recommend it for any women who really want to further explore the kinds of issues of how you need to adjust or be maybe conscious of your style and conscious of your environment in order to be successful in some of these more maybe different environments. I think in the end, however, regardless of whether you're a man or a woman in a manufacturing environment, maintaining a leadership style that embraces flexibility, that shows that you're willing to listen is very important, because in the end, people will watch the decisions that you make, how you act. Are you being fair? Are you being consistent? Are you being firm yet respectful? And are you out and about? Are you available? Are you out on the floor and available to people to speak with them? And I think if you can work hard and be a good example, show that you're a real person who listens and cares, that's the approach that really worked well for me, regardless of whether I was a male or a female. So I want to transition a little bit to talk about work-life balance and my transition from the automotive industry into Caterpillar. Many of you may be wondering kind of, why I made the transition when I talked about the career and my opportunity in Brazil as being one of the, the best opportunities that I ever had in my career. One thing that I think that many of you may be aware of, but that I was faced certainly in that position, was really trying to figure out how to balance work and the rest of my life. Certainly as I've moved up in the company, and I'm sure there are some people that are able to balance their work and their family better than others, but you know, as you move up, the more time you'll be pulled into activities that take you away from your personal life. And whether that's the demands of a job due to events or activities or dinner meetings with you know, suppliers or customers or traveling for business, you know, a lot of times you're also asked to volunteer for board meetings or special activities that, you know, are philanthropic in nature. But as you move up the ladder in any company, you'll be asked to be a part of these activities. And for some, that's great. You know, if you love your job and your family work-life balances, it's easy to spend large amounts of time immersed in the activity. But the key, I think, is to decide how much you can give and really what's your definition of success. So for me, with work-life balance, certainly my turning point was reached as I worked in Brazil. As I said earlier, it was my dream job, super challenging, it was demanding. I traveled extensively and really had dinner engagements almost every night, including weekends. We were launching many new vehicles, and we had extensive media events. So there was a lot of work outside of my personal life, even, you know, on the weekends. So my life started to get a little bit out of balance. In addition to that, the timing for my family was a bit off. Overseas assignments for many can be a fantastic opportunity, and I will tell you, I've talked to numerous people who've had wonderful opportunities working overseas, especially if your entire family can go. Many families really build on a strong expat community, and it becomes like a family away from a family, so they meet all these other families and live in a different country and experience a really great culture. And so, you know, it really can be a fantastic experience. For me, however, my children, by the time that I had received the assignment in Brazil, had grown and were in college and or you know, out of college and in graduate school, and so they were not able to go with me. And certainly for a traditional environment where the husband works and the wife is at home with the kids, that expat community that I talked about earlier really works well because people can gain friendships. But I will tell you, in my experience in overseas, when the woman is working and the man stays home, there aren't any other, at least in Brazil, there weren't any other males that really didn't have anything to do all day but to meet with one another. And so the opportunity to have my husband move with me to Brazil and stay there really didn't work for us. And he was unable to get a work visa, so that wasn't an option for us. And so we ended up deciding that I would stay in Brazil and he would stay back in the U.S. with my children. So with my extensive work schedule and you know, with my husband and children staying in the U.S., my father was ill with cancer. Everything kind of came to a boiling point. And so you know, at some point you have to kind of decide how is it that you want to live, and you may have to make choices that compromise your short-term ideal job dreams in order to allow the long-term to flourish, and so that you can have balance in your life. And so I made a very difficult decision to return to the U.S., and I was able to spend some time with my family. My daughter was engaged, so she was getting married, so I planned my daughter's wedding, and at the same time I started talking to Caterpillar. And Caterpillar was a company that attracted me really not only for the solid business performance, and because it was in an industry that without question will be growing dramatically over the next few decades. You know, when I analyzed the company, there was no doubt it was a solid performer with a strong reputation. But the difference for me as I really approached looking to see if I wanted to work for another company was, do my skills, do all my experiences have applicability? And what are the kinds of people and who are the kinds of people that I'll be working with? And really, the difference for me in choosing Caterpillar over any other company that I talked to was that not only did they have the performance side, but the people side was excellent. And the leadership, senior leadership of the company was very grounded. It was in a Midwestern company with Midwestern values, and I found the people wonderful. And so as a result of that experience and having had time to really assess how this new job would fit with my life, I felt very comfortable that I had made the right transition and really moved in the right direction. So about a year ago, I made the transition and I never looked back. I really feel I'm in a position where I can leverage my skill set. I'm still able to travel globally, but I'm able to balance certainly my work and my home life in a way that to me makes a lot more sense, and that allows me to explore some new business opportunities in a different industry than I've ever been involved with before. So work-life balance is not always easy, but I think, you know, regardless of the choices that you make and the decisions that you make, that, you know, the other thing that you need to consider as you're navigating through your career is, you know, what kind of a company that you really want to work for. And one thing I'm commonly asked, especially by students, is, you know, do you really like working for a large company? And why would you go from one large company to another large company? And you know, honestly, I really think there's advantages and disadvantages to any situation, but I really see more advantages than disadvantages in working for a large company. You know, clearly the breadth of career opportunities is enormous. As I look back at my career at General Motors, as well as within Caterpillar, the variety of businesses that you can work in within the same functional area is so large and really provides huge opportunities to grow and learn. So I think that variety is very energizing. Also, you know, I think large companies are generally global, and one thing that I really appeals to me is the ability to be able to see different cultures, to travel to different countries and facilities, and really have that impact overall globally, especially as you look at companies that are going to survive for the long term in their growth strategies. And a lot, you know, most large companies nowadays really are global in nature. Certainly, large companies have resources to invest in the latest technologies and to try new approaches to solve problems, and this is definitely something that appeals to me as I talk to some of my LGO counterparts that are working for small companies. You know, having capital available to invest in new technologies or even systems is a huge challenge for many. And so, you know, the advantage of the large company is certainly that you have deeper resources to be able to invest and be able to be involved with the leading edge technologies. The other thing is that I continue to be amazed at the exposure that I've had to wonderful leaders, really at both companies, and leaders that have different styles and different approaches. And I think if you're in a very diverse leadership arena, having exposure to people who you can emulate and that you would like to copy and be like, at the same time learning from those who are the opposite is wonderful. And large companies allow you that opportunity to see some of the best and probably also some of the worst. Clearly the downside, I would say, though, to working in a large company is the potential to get lost in the shuffle. So I can only reinforce the need to network yourself, to meet people, to take those positions that allow you to build your network across when the opportunity is right, so that you can build on those connections to get yourself noticed. The other thing that I think that's important as you're working in a big company is that you have to have patience. During my career, I had periods where I didn't move much. My career kind of felt like it slowed down for a while, and then I had periods where it moved very fast. And so focusing on doing a great job and not what your next job is immediately moving to, and just doing a great job at what you do and enjoying the ride is really, to me, the key to being successful in a large company as well. And then finally, taking responsibility certainly for both your personal and professional life, because in the end, you know, no one's going to do that for you. You have to take control and make decisions and pull back, you know, as I did if you need to, and or go full steam ahead if that's your true desire. certainly, I wanted to take the opportunity to really say a little bit about the LGO program, or when I went into the program, it was the LFM program. But to me, the MIT LGO program was a life-changing experience. And not only did LGO provide a high-quality education, both technically and the business concepts, the power of interacting with the other students who had real-life experience before getting into the program was really important to me. And I think that the focus on leadership was the thing that stands out as the real difference to me. I learned a lot about leadership in going to the LGO program. I've kept in contact with many of my classmates. We have a great alumni network, and I've been contacted and have assisted many other MIT students who need help along the way. So it's been a great opportunity to build some relationships. And in fact, I've also used the program as a way to recruit students from the program to help fill our leadership pipeline to build legacy. So in fact, we've recruited a number of students from the class of 2012 to fill some key leadership roles. So like many global companies, while the economy is recovering and we're accelerating our growth, one of our key challenges is to ensure that we have a strong and vibrant manufacturing footprint globally and strong leaders with the right technical and managerial skill sets. And so the LGO program is the perfect place to recruit from, and certainly I really can't say enough good about the overall program and its impact on me personally. So my final slide for the day, and then we'll open it up for questions. I did want to let you know that there is a workshop which really kind of gets to this concept of future of manufacturing in the U.S. and the workforce of the future. There is a conference on May 8th and 9th on the Sloan campus at MIT, and as a part of that two-day conference, there will be a panel discussion that Bill Green, who's the executive chairman from Accenture, he'll be moderating it. And Cindy Estrada, who's a vice president in the UAW, along with Diana Trombley, who is the vice president for manufacturing and labor relations at General Motors, and myself, as well as Thomas Koken, will be on the panel. And we will be discussing a variety of topics, and included in this panel discussion, we'll be really talking about things like how the economic recovery has impacted the American manufacturing workforce, and are we seeing a void in manufacturing a workforce as we look at skill set gaps, as we look at opportunities to fill that pipeline, and do we see American manufacturing continuing as a vibrant part of the future of the U.S., and how are companies really working to make sure that that's part of their competitive advantage. And certainly speaking from Caterpillar, a vibrant U.S. manufacturing workforce is very important to our future, and so I'll be there to speak a little bit about Caterpillar's plans, and as well as my experiences at General Motors in building a strong U.S. workforce. So that's it for today for me. At this point, I would like to open it up for general questions. Any questions that I could answer?
Okay, folks, I'm going to unmute everyone, so if you could please just go right ahead and ask any questions you have for Denise after this wonderful talk.
I'll simply say, am I on? Al Ehrenfried, it was a wonderful talk. I have been an entrepreneur through my career, so seeing how it is to work with large companies was very revealing to me.
Well, thank you, Al. I certainly understand the challenges of working in a small company and being a business owner is very different. But there are some parallels, I think, too. Certainly the challenges of trying to move across various skill sets and such. There are some similarities as well as definitely some differences. So thank you for your comments.
Okay, thanks, Al. Any other questions?
It's Al again. I think it was a wonderful statement of how you wove your way through your career, starting with a very young family. I think that's very commendable, the way you carried all those responsibilities, and I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Thank you.
I have another question, Denise. I wonder if you could just sort of reflect on your work in these two global but American-based companies, and you know, perhaps thinking about the LFM program as it was then, which was really created out of a sense of mission to support American-based manufacturing, and just the huge evolution that's taken place in those companies, in the program in American manufacturing since the time that you were a student at MIT.
You know, it really is an interesting point that you raised, Josh, and I think, you know, as the LGO program was in its infancy, certainly there was a huge offshoring, if you will, of American jobs into the global competitive marketplace, and you saw a huge shift, you know, away from manufacturing in the U.S., and there certainly was a lot of concern if that trend were to continue, and I think to a certain degree that concern exists today. But I'll say, speaking from both the perspective of Caterpillar as well as even General Motors, that recognizing that in every case we need to have a strong footprint wherever we sell and in whatever market we play in, that there needs to be a manufacturing footprint that exists in that country. And so the need to continue to build U.S. jobs is real, and I know it is something that will continue. If you look at, for instance, Caterpillar, we've grown, you know, 50% in our global workforce since 2010, and nearly half the jobs that we've grown have been in the U.S. And so continuing to invest to make sure that as we're building that capability that we're able to have the people available, but also recognizing that the answer to U.S. competitiveness is not to completely offshore. We were caught quite a bit in the conundrum, if you will, that if everything's outsourced, then to ship it back with all the transit costs and the increasing and rising labor costs in other countries, that it really in the end didn't book balance. It didn't book balance for either country, or either company rather. So I think you'll see, and there should be some good discussion in this panel next week, a lot of dialogue about the value of making sure that that footprint remains and that it continues to grow. And I think that's a shift. That is a definite shift from where it was 20 years ago. Other questions?
Okay, well, again, Denise, thank you so much for this talk. It's great to hear about this career arc of yours, and also to get a preview of the discussion we'll have next week in our conference. And thanks to all those who participated. This discussion will be archived on the LGO website, which is lgo.mit.edu, in case you'd like to refer your colleagues or friends to pick this up later on in the week. So again, thanks to Denise, and thanks to all the participants today.
Okay, thank you, Josh.